Start all over
and
again.
And you never. It seems like you never get a single crop. Either there's a fire or the hail.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean,
we're live on YouTube.
Okay, it's just ridiculous. Everybody needs to read those books.
Yes,
I think.
Agreed. This is that's how the making of a man. Well, anybody, a person.
I wept at the end of The Long Winter. That I like.
Go ahead, Juan.
At the end of that book,
yeah, go ahead.
I cried. And I looked over and my wife
I
was
laughed
crying.
and I cried. It was beautiful. It moved you.
Yeah.
Okay.
I tried to figure out what is it about these books, because it's not like the writing is
No, but it's real,
It's
right?
so real. Right.
It draws you right in. There is a drama, right?
Uh-huh.
I think we're all drawn to story, and it's got a great drama. It's got a great story, got great characters.
And she's like part of the American,
Okay,
like the
here we
American
go.
West, like the time period was important. Yeah.
Yes.
Today, I am here to give you the assurance that I have not forgotten you.
If we want to see the new evangelization become more than just jargon, if we want to see it grow legs and gain traction and change the world, we have got to take seriously our responsibilities as husbands and fathers, and especially as sons of God.
I want to propose to you then that something that our world is desperately in need of in the midst of this crisis is Catholic Christian masculinity.
If you want to be a good father, then bring your children to confession with you.
I can't get there unless I become a man of ascesis, a man of asceticism, a man of training.
A man not doing penance, a man not disciplined, is not a man.
You guys have upped your game.
You know what, guys? I gotta say, I love the concept of Man Show.
Warning: the Catholic Man Show is about to begin.
Welcome to the Catholic Man Show. We're on the Lord's team, the winning side. So raise your glass. It's good to be back in studio. Adam Minahan here with David Niles. We got Juan back on the buttons. Juan took a vacation for a little bit. We allowed him to have a vacation. We did not pay him overtime or anything like that, but we did allow him to take a little bit of a vacation. But it's great to have Juan back.
His vacation days are done for the year, though.
Yes.
Now mine are not.
No, you're about to go on your month hiatus.
Yeah, it's gonna be awesome.
But yeah, Juan, it's great to have you back, bud. We missed you. It's good to have you back.
Don't do it again.
Please don't do it again.
Yeah, please.
I'll try.
We also have Micah Eby in
yes,
the Peanut Gallery over here. One of our totus tuus. What would you call the totus tuus worker? Like warrior, totus tuus warrior.
I like warrior. Let's just stick with warrior.
Yeah, he's running the totus tuus at our local parish, St. Benedict,
Mm-hmm.
and we have Mike Hernan.
Woo!
Here on camera.
It's great to be with you guys.
Yeah, first time to be here in the studio. We call it a studio because it's a studio. It's where it's a study. We have books here. It's where the studs hang out. So we just kind of
just go all in on the stud thing.
Yeah.
You guys definitely are Catholic studs.
Well,
according to your family,
at least according to myself. Oh, I'm definitely a stud.
I looked it up before I got here, and you guys are in the dictionary.
Right.
Perfect.
Catholic studs.
Yeah.
It's good that our Patreon money's really coming in handy. There.
Google search masculinity.
Really dominating Wikipedia these days.
Yeah. Feel free to Photoshop yourself on that image of me.
Mike, is this your first time into Tulsa?
It is. First time in Oklahoma and Tulsa.
Awesome.
So it has been great. I mean, it's been overwhelming just being here.
Well,
I love it.
Right?
Well, Juan did pick you up from the airport.
It was, I don't want to go,
overwhelming.
I don't want to brag too much and make him blush, but he was amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know how he did it, but he had a sign for me too, for my name and everything. I mean, it was.
Did he really?
It was beautiful.
That would
well,
be something
this
you
morning, after I already knew who he was, he had a little sign.
Oh, I was going to say, because I can't tell if you're being sarcastic right now, not because
you never know.
Exactly something that he would do.
Would do.
Yeah.
Yes. He
Mike,
is awesome.
I would never blush. I'm too tan for blushing.
I was also
You can keep it
thinking
coming.
that, like, well, he's brown, so you can't even tell when he blushes.
I could see that one had something deep inside him. about just making people feel so welcome and also uncomfortable at the same time.
Right.
Yeah, it's really beautiful.
He really
that way.
thrives in that.
Yeah. It's really great.
Yeah,
that is his home. That is where he lives.
That is his love language. Is lovingly embarrassment.
Hey, it's what every good guy needs. A little razzing, little start off the day right.
Yeah.
It's like, are you really going to eat that?
Especially with total strangers.
Yes.
So, Mike, you have a podcast with your wife.
Yes.
Messy Family Podcast or
Yes.
Project.
Yep.
Messy Family
It's both.
Project.
Everything you want.
There we go.
Formerly known as Messy Parenting.
Correct. We changed the name to Protect the Innocent. So we started off Messy Parenting, and we realized it wasn't. We wanted to have it bigger. It's all about the family, right? And but life is a project, and so we launched as a podcast in 2015. But then as a ministry for the last 3 years, we've really been doing this full time, both in our podcast, and then we have lots of resources on our site. And in COVID, we started doing some courses as well. So a lot of stuff that we're trying to do to help support moms and dads.
Yeah, we'll get into some of those.
I was
courses
talking
later.
to Lady Pamela, my wife, about this yesterday, just asking her, wouldn't that be crazy if this is what we did for a living? You and I just had a podcast, and like worked together on that would just be so awesome.
It is. Well, and it's one of those things that I think when we were young and married, we were thinking, wouldn't it be great to have a business together? Just run a project. Like, hey, we're pretty good at these kid things. Let's try a business, right? And but it has been more challenging than I would have appreciated. I would go to work. And, normal job, and I'd come home and, I might be complaining about work or people I work with. And now what do I do when I want to complain about somebody that I'm working with?
Ooh.
Yeah. And then also, too, the
Pull one of the kids aside, like, I tell you what, your mom.
I know.
She's really driving me crazy.
And in the beginning, that was good, but then I realized that was going to a dark place. Just kidding. No, but it is great. It is wonderful.
Go talk to the chickens.
That's right. Well, that's where I'm finding a lot of friendship there. There's a lot of bonding.
I feel like when they look at me, they get me.
Oh yeah. I mean, it just and they try to speak to you. They're communicating. Flapping their feathers, pecking the ground. They're like, this is what life is about. Sometimes you just feel like you're henpecked, but you know that it's okay because you can still be the rooster in your own mind.
They're saying, Mike, you just need to slow down and eat a grasshopper.
It's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Delicious.
I love it.
So you have 10 kids?
We have 10 kids and 3 grandchildren.
Awesome.
So our 2 oldest are married. Our kids are from ages 8 to 25. And so we've got about 5 still in the home, the bottom 5 and the top 5. Now, as long as our older kids aren't listening, the bottom 5 are the best. I mean, they're just awesome.
Yeah.
But, don't tell the others. But I did, because we have 10 kids, we did have some test kids there, kids that we're just practicing on. And
sure.
now we actually know what we're doing. So it's great.
Yeah, like probably 3 and 4.
Yeah, we do have a counseling fund, so it's okay. So we're thinking they'll work through stuff later.
Because, like your first 2, it's like, well, you're like really attached to them because, they came, but then like 3 and 4, you realize like, oh, okay. And then
try to do some experiments with 3 and 4.
When the next ones come along.
That's right. That's exactly
When the next ones come along, you realize, oh, yeah, 3 and 4 here, like, we can really, let's try some stuff out.
Yes. Well, and it's also, too, you get to a place where, after going from 3 kids, right? So that was the moving from man to zone defense. You get. I felt we got overwhelmed when we had baby number 3. Just maybe where we're at in our lives. But after 4, they say you lose about 25% of your brain capacity with each child. I don't know what happens at 10 exactly, but the math. Could you work that math out for me?
Yeah, I mean, I think that works.
Okay,
I think
that's good.
Yeah,
solid.
I do numbers, so I think it's fine.
Good. Anyway, but it's less of a stress after you have a couple kids because it just makes the economies of scale. Things are working. There's a groove, and it's been a greatest joy.
So I mean, the principle of diminishing returns definitely applies. I think the biggest change is obviously going from 0 children to 1 child.
That's right.
I mean, but it's such a joy. People don't ever talk about how hard that change is. I mean, they do sometimes, you know. But then going to 2 to 3, everybody freaks out about that because 3 kids, you're done, right?
Yeah.
So then you have 4, and it's like, that was that a people ask you, is that an accident?
You're,
it's like,
yes.
why don't you shut up?
I know. Come over here. If you think, some people would say, don't you have a TV? And I'm like, hey, if you think making love to your wife and watching TV is the same thing,
you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, you're doing one of those things wrong. Okay.
If you ever ask that question to me again, I will slap you in the face, then you can ask me if that was an accident.
Yeah, because after 4, the people are like, you're teetering on the craziness level.
That's
like they're
right.
not sure, like, what's going on? Why are you doing this? And then we found that 4. We have 4 kids, but the 4th one was difficult.
That's what we found too. Like the 3rd, it wasn't. Everyone
Wasn't
said,
too bad.
3.
Yeah, for us it was.
it just 4 was where it really kicked in.
4 was joy for us, and it's funny because I was in Washington D.C. and that was in an environment where they were looking at me funny when I had 3 kids. Then we had 4 and 5 while I was there, and I was like, they're like, I just said, don't worry about it. I'm the Catholic guy, and that's it.
Right.
And it just kind of put me in a little box. They thought they understood everything about me.
I'm the weird Catholic. Don't worry about it.
Well, I'm okay with that. I own that identity.
I
claim
tell
that.
people like, look, when you're someone like me,
You
who
have
is just really so much better than everybody else, I feel like I owe it to the
You do.
rest
You
of
have a
people.
responsibility.
It's my gift to the rest of you.
And I was in politics, and I'd say, well, who's going to pay for your Social Security if not for my kids?
Right.
So.
That's right. One time at the office, someone said, so are you done? And I looked at them and said, done with what? And it's like, I wanted to like be very like bring it out to this person because they didn't realize what they're asking me. Like, are you asking me if I'm gonna continue to like be married to my wife? If you know what I'm saying, like, because yes, I do intend
that is part of the plan.
Continue to be married to her. So, is that your question? I just want to make sure I'm answering the right question here.
Oh man. So Messy Family Project.
Yes.
You started in 2015. And you've taken it full time for 3 years.
Yeah.
What's like the big jump? Like, what was the thing that you did not realize was going to be the tough part?
Well, to be honest, it has been a joy in so many ways. But the old I think it's Chesterton, right? It says if there's something worth doing, it's worth doing poorly, right? Is that I don't think we would have started this if we actually thought people were going to be listening that much, right? I'm like, hey, my brother, my sister, my sister-in-law, whatever. But then as it's grown and we're getting this reaction, we've kind of been humbled by the little things that seem insignificant. And I know this probably happens to you guys, things that you say that have such a profound impact. It's not getting caught up in believing that it's us, that it's something that we're doing. It's obviously God's work. But really the challenge is going from, okay, this is what God has called us to, and we got to keep our eyes focused on that and making ourselves available. So like going full time, that was a big transition. That was a major transition, saying, I give everything up, and I'm going to just do as God had us call for.
That is a beautiful step in faith. Man.
Yeah,
sure. Very scary.
Yeah.
All right, well, when we get back, we're going to dive into more of the topic here.
I want to ask about the books.
Reason for being together. Yeah.
Okay, we'll be right back. Juan, it's like riding a bike, man. You're not even rusty. Doing great.
You're feeling it in your back, though, I see, huh?
I just like to poke my chest, even though nobody's seeing me.
Yeah. Well, we do, and it's impressive.
Yeah.
Right on it?
Yeah, whenever you're ready. I'm good. I mean, are you good?
Yeah.
All right.
If anybody's interested, I am too, just so you know.
We just were going to...
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We just kind of assumed.
Yeah.
Why don't you go ahead and just...
I know you think you are, but... Welcome back to the Catholic Man Show. I'm David Niles, here with Adam Minahan and Mike Hernan. Messy Family Project. Go subscribe to their podcast. If you like families, if you like being in a family, if you like raising families, if you like to look at other families.
Because I know you like to party.
Be very helpful. Oh, yeah, I definitely like
Because everybody who has a family has a party basically all the time.
Dave,
That's
you
right.
definitely don't like to party. You're not the party guy.
Dave, you are not.
Hi, I'm Dave, and I like to party. Guys, I'm the party guy.
Whiskey.
Dave is definitely not the party guy.
I know for a fact you do not party. That is
So
a
my
great
kids,
movie.
my kids introduced that to us. My
That movie
older
is
kids,
so
I
underrated.
love it. So it was actually, it was something that we actually had to wait for a little bit to get our older boys, our teenage, 13, 15-year-old. We watch it with them, and they love it. And they were like, "This is what we've been waiting for."
May the ancestors protect you. Like, that is just everything. I just think that's a funny movie. Way underrated.
I agree.
Hot Rod is the movie of
It's
you
worth
don't
it.
know.
It's worth it.
Right.
Every minute, and
Trying to, like,
it's so
beat up
quotable.
His his stepfather the whole time. And
And the '80s dance mix, like in the woods. I mean, come on, it's just
Right.
good stuff.
It is.
But I did want to say that your music just makes me want to jam. You guys are.
Thank you.
This is awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It feels. First, it felt like a little metal in the beginning,
You
but
get
then
to
it
the
got a
blues.
little bluesy, a little country feel. It's just,
Right.
it's got some funk.
Thank you.
I like
Thank
it.
you. Yeah. So when we first started the podcast, we had no idea what we were doing, and we decided, yes, we're gonna do a radio show. And then I thought, oh, that means we need to have music.
Yes.
And so I went on. I had a guy make that for us, and I didn't tell Dave about it. He walked into my living room one day. I was like, Dave, just hang in there with me. Let me just hear me out. And I hit play, started, and I go, and welcome to the Catholic Man Show. And I was like waiting to see like what his reaction was going to be, because
Yes.
it's not a typical intro outro sound. And he's like, I dig it. Let's move forward.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I love it. You guys are good.
So summer is here. Kids are coming back into the home if they're not homeschooled. One of the things that Bishop Conderla did, the bishop here in the Diocese of Tulsa and Eastern Oklahoma, he just posted this on Friday, promoting reading for children, and said,
Nice.
and he said, like, hey, here's a couple books that I recommend for your children. What are some of the books that you recommend for your children?
Oh, that's beautiful.
And he even said something like, TV seems to break down the imagination, while reading lifts up the imagination, fires it up. And so he's promoting, getting your kids to read. What are some of the books that you recommend?
Well, probably the classics, right? Started with Narnia. Like I think that is
that's when he promoted.
And it was great because Juan was I was doing that with his kids. He was saying in the car as we were driving, Narnia again, because it's just one of those things. It's great to rotate through, and I just love it. As a dad, I love reading it to our kids. I think it's important that men are reading to their sons, or all their kids, but it's about capturing their imagination. Your bishop said that it's just we've got to create a different view of what it means to be a Christian, to be a man, to be a child of God, and those stories have such great insight into what it means to be a man. Another one is the Wing Feather series. I don't know if you're familiar with this. Andrew Peterson,
I don't know.
he's I think he's Orthodox Christian, but it's similar idea, kind of fantasy world. But these are these kids who don't know who they are, and they're coming to understand their identity. But it also kind of shows how evil corrupts and changes you, but how there is redemption and transformation even through that. It's a beautiful story, and it's got a lot more humor for like preteen, early teen kids. Love it. And then there's a lot of, you guys had mentioned on another show, the Dangerous Book for Boys. Big fan of that book. I've had it for all our three sons so far, and the fourth one is just beginning on that.
Nice.
Yeah. So I mean, there's a ton of other stuff, but I'm not opposed to movies. Like I think there's some great movies out there, and just to be age appropriate, right where it works. But just the Gladiator, again thinking of men, right?
Right.
But then going back to some of the old TV series, we're talking about Little House on the Prairie. I mean, there's some quality stuff that we need to not just fall into what Disney is offering us today, because it's just junk, and it's not good for their imagination.
Right.
It's not good for their soul.
It's all propaganda these days.
It is.
Too.
It is.
It's just ridiculous. Why can't you just tell a good story?
Yes.
Like, why do you have to? Why are
Ruin
you
it.
doing this? Like, aren't you trying to make money? Like, isn't that what you want for these movies? Like, I'm not gonna go see them now because you're like, why don't you just make a good movie instead?
Yep.
Whatever. We don't have to talk about that.
Yeah.
But I also like movies. Like, be intentional. If you're gonna watch a movie, like, watch a movie.
Yes.
Don't just have a movie on.
I have a list of movies that we have gone through, because during COVID and everyone's locked down and stuff like that, I was like, I want to be more thoughtful about the movies that we're watching. Some of the old movies, the Scarlet and the Black. There's this. You're familiar with that?
I just watched that not too long ago.
It's great.
It was incredible.
And then. Although
what a manly priest.
It was. And it's like, we need to see these examples of priests, but just of men who are willing to sacrifice, who are using their skill to go out and save other people's lives, But anyway, there's a ton more that we just kind of worked through during COVID, and then we just had conversations about them. Didn't make it a big lecture, but like, hey, you just got something great, a book or a movie, a short story. And let's talk about this. What does this say about what it means to be human? What does this say about virtue? What does it say about the fight of good and evil? What does this mean about and for our lives. So it's great conversations.
Yeah. Even cartoons. I was thinking about this. Cartoons today, they're terrible.
Except for Phineas and Ferb.
I don't know that one.
Oh,
I don't
sorry.
know. But it's
I'm a
like,
big fan.
it seems like all the cartoons these days is like, conflict resolution and let's teach kids. It's like, I don't know. Like that's, in the old days, you had Acme, you had good and evil.
Yes.
It was very clear. The kids knew this side is good, that side is bad. That's what kids really, that's what they need to know, that there is a good side and a bad side, and we like the good side.
That's right.
They don't need all of these complex
nuances. Well, because kids are black and white, right? There's a book I remember reading many years ago called The Landscape with Dragons, and it talked about that kids' imaginations, particularly early, need.
Is that O'Brien?
Yes,
Charlie O'Brien,
Michael O'Brien.
Michael O'Brien.
I think it's I think, if I remember correctly, but it's the whole idea that you can't make something that's evil into something that's kind of good,
right?
And, because for young kids, particularly, you need to be able to have black and white. That's how they are formed. That's how they're shaped. Now, as you get into teenage years, there are some nuances and kind of things that we need to go to. But our kids, little kids, they need to see good and evil and understand that there's something worth fighting for. There's something that is clear and unmistakable.
I don't remember who said this, but it was like, you don't have to tell children that there's magic in the world or that there are dragons in the world. They know that there's magic and dragons. What they need to know is that the dragons should be slain.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Somebody
is that
said
Chesterton?
that.
I was just saying.
I was leaning towards Chesterton on it, but
it sounds.
I don't know who said it, but it's not me.
But it's not you.
Yeah.
But go ahead. No, I was thinking I agree. I think you have to be intentional with screen time if you go into with your children. I liked the idea of, as a kid growing up, Saturday morning cartoons.
That's right. Yes.
Now that doesn't happen anymore, right?
No.
We don't even have
streaming,
cable
right,
or anything. Yeah. So, but if you're going to do it, I think you need to be intentional about it and set boundaries, set time limits, and then let them have it, and let's have fun and make it a family thing. But then let's move on.
That's right. That's right. And it always should be in the bound. I mean, again, every family's got to make their own decisions on where that boundary is. Mm-hmm. But knowing that there are other priorities, like particularly as we talk about coming into summer now, it's like, okay, you know what, your kids, a book project, like having some goals, like we just talked about it in our family, like just having even some prizes, if you will, like just to motivate the kids to say, this is worth it. This is, you can't be on the computer, you can't play video games until you've actually done this much reading. So creating an environment where this is the priority, and your kids will adapt to the environment you create. They will rise to the occasion, and that's what we want. And I think summertime is a great time to be bored. To let your kids be bored, so they go out and figure something out. Otherwise, they're always depending on you. So anyway, that's a.
So what are some of the projects you have going on?
That's a good point. I like that concept.
Yeah. What are some that you have going on?
With the ministry?
So I can steal it from you.
With the kids?
Yeah, so I can steal it from you and then claim it. It's like my brilliance of this.
Yeah, I don't have anything great going on right now. So what we have, I'm putting up a basketball hoop, right? So I have my sons doing it, but we had to figure it out because we had to cut out and create backing to it and stuff like that. But we also are doing a ton of yard work. So I have my teenage sons teaching them how to use the chainsaw. Like, so going out and taking down trees. I mean, it's awesome. Like, it's really, really fun. And then we completely redid our backyard and built this.
Because you have a few acres, right?
A little over 3 acres.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's nice, but we're in town in Steubenville, so it's still we're still in town, but it's kind of tucked away, and it's we love it, and it's just building out that
dream
land
within a dream.
It is, but I think there's something actually powerful about the land. You talked about chickens. You got your backyard with your smoker. It's like there's something very, very important about the land and the stuff that we have. We are stuff of the earth, and that we came from dirt, and right, but that there's something awesome about claiming our place. It's like the old Israelites. This is the land set aside for them, and I think we need to teach our kids that. Get them working the soil.
Well, we were from the earth, from the dirt, for the dirt.
There you go.
Like the word Adam and dirt. They're the same, like the same root word. It's like Adamah or something is earth, dirt in
Well, I think
Hebrew.
you can look at the idea of like, I'd love to have 10 acres. I'd love to have, because I'd love to have 10 or 20 acres and let my boys go out there and work on it. And you kind of fantasize about this and you put it up in a pedestal, but like kind of like what you were saying, you have to just utilize what you got your backyard. So I mean, my backyard's small, but we have a garden. We have garden beds. I have a smoker. And we just try to utilize what you have.
Yes.
To to cultivate the the ground that you have to work with.
Yeah. And it's great for the kids. I mean, just to have that experience and the nature and the life that you're breathing forth. Stewardship, man. Stewardship.
Right. That was something I tried to do this year, is just be more connected to the land I have. I don't, like, what? Okay, well, I could get more land, but I'm not even, I could have
I'm not utilizing what I got right now.
I could put another raised garden bed in my backyard without losing hardly any space,
Right.
So
that's powerful.
That's what I did.
So when we get back, let's talk about raising boys.
Excellent.
All right? We're on the Lord's team.
The winning side.
So raise your glass.
Yeah, we didn't even get into boys. Sorry.
No, I mean,
okay.
we have
We're
plenty
good.
of time. Yeah, we're good. Juan, are you good, bud?
Yeah, I'd like to give a shout out to Matt Fouché joining us in YouTube Live, saying, "Nice guest today. We're members of the familyhood."
Oh, yeah. Matt, we have a membership site. So we have a neighborhood. We created it. It's called the Messy Family Neighborhood. And,
nice.
We've got, I don't know, roughly about 40, 50 people that join on a regular basis to be a part of like date nights that we do every month and other events and things like that. So it's fun. And then it's just online dialogue. Because I wanted to get off Facebook, so we created our own kind of membership conversation so not to distract. And we're like, look, you're coming here. This is people you know, you love, and you share your values. So let's pray for each other. Let's support each other. Ideas, suggestions. And Matt's a great guy, and he's actually given us some great suggestions on things to add to kind of creating a parenting toolkit online.
Is that Matt Fouché from TU?
Yeah.
Oh.
From where?
Well, he went to TU here, Tulsa University.
I did not know that.
He's our friend. We visited him in.
Oh.
So you know Matt Fouché?
Well, I just from the neighborhood.
Okay,
I don't know him.
sweet.
I don't know him other than emails and stuff like that.
It's a small world.
It is. Well, once you're in the Catholic space, you're bumping into people, which is
such a
awesome.
great place,
yeah, I love it. I do think that we'll come to a day where we'll bump into somebody and we're like, I don't know anybody that knows you, but you're like a serious Catholic. But like right now, it's like you always know someone in common.
Well, it's like the 7 degrees of separation thing,
Yeah. We're better than Kevin Bacon. I can guarantee you we can get to 3 and we would know a ton of people that anybody
I'm sure.
in the Catholic world, we would know within 3 degrees.
Like,
we could get to that person.
if you're like active in the Catholic world, then
and I've got a ringer because I know Scott Hahn. So like basically, if I connect with him, done
and done.
Yeah,
that is true. I mean, like that'll get you. That'll get you.
That's 1.5 or
right.
Something.
Yeah. Welcome back to the Catholic Man Show. Sitting here with Mike Hernan from the Messy Family Project. Go check them out. Their podcast, the neighborhood, the Messy Family Neighborhood.
That's right.
What's your website?
MessyFamilyProject.org. Keep it simple, man.
.org.
Yes. We are all about simple. I mean, Catholic Man Show.
Would you look at
Very
Got it all
simple.
there.
Very simple. Straightforward. We're all about that.
Look at our logo, like 3 things circling each other. You know, it's simple. Trinitarian. You got it.
Yeah.
It almost got a Celtic knot feel to it. Trinitarian.
Totally.
But it's like father, mother, child. But there's a dynamism. We're moving. You know, this is what it's about. Family life.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so let's talk. Let's jump into it. So I think raising boys is tough sledding these days.
Yeah.
Understanding what boyhood is, understanding what manhood is very important in this whole aspect, and being able to relay that to your sons. I think that's one of the reasons why we have guys who are 24, 25, 26 years old with no full-time job or not even looking for a job.
That's right.
Because they've never been hit to the point of like saying like, you are now a man, you have responsibilities, and you are called to greatness, and let's move forward.
Exactly.
And so that's a big issue that we have.
Yeah, nobody's told them like what you're doing is not acceptable.
That's right. Well, they've never been challenged or given the opportunity to go there, right?
Yeah.
And they've been coddled and told, I mean, because you look at education, you look at culture that really tries to demean or diminish or water down what masculinity truly is. And I'm not talking just machismo. We're talking about true, genuine, you guys know this, the real, authentic masculinity.
Yeah.
And so from a very early age, the society has been telling our boys, be safe. Don't do something that's going to be dangerous,
right?
And control your emotions, and don't play with guns. Don't make your grilled cheese sandwich into a gun. We're gonna kick you. We're gonna expel you from school if you do that.
Even as a young kid, 3rd grade or 4th grade, whatever it was,
And this leaves an impression upon boys, and that those boys never grow up, and their bodies might, but they're still wearing feety pajamas when they're in their 20s. No disrespect if either of you are wearing them. Right?
I don't.
I do not.
Okay. But
nope,
not now.
I feel like on Christmas morning, if you have like a onesie,
that's okay.
Okay,
that's right.
Like
that's legit.
Break out the onesie.
Yes, especially if you're in unison with other people.
Sure.
But if you're the only one and it's a dinner party, may not be so cool.
Yeah, gotcha.
Just saying. Just a tip. Pro tip.
Yeah.
Pro tip right there. But I do think raising boys today is more challenging. I think when we get to heaven. Not just about boys, but just in general, people are like, wow, you guys survived the internet and this. You had a whole industry. Now, there are generations that went by before us that had persecution and death. So the church has been through a lot, right? Yeah, we've seen a lot, and we've been through it all, and we survived on the other side. But that's raising boys today. We have such a monumental task before us. But really, I think everything in the world hinges upon men being men, dads stepping up and stepping into a place, even if they're not necessarily fully formed themselves, because there's a lot about masculinity that isn't passed on to all of us.
Right. And if you wait to be perfect, you're never going to start.
That's right. That's exactly it. But you got to get in there, and you got to get your hands messy in this mix with your sons.
Yeah, and I mean, part of being a father, you protect, you provide, and you establish. And I think the establishing part is where we drop the ball. I mean, every man can say, I can protect my family, even conceptually, like
that's right.
And provide for your family. You can conceptually, even if it's not something that you're doing outwardly, but the establishing part is the one that's a little bit more abstract, a little bit harder to pragmatically apply to your day-to-day life.
Yeah, protecting, providing, like what that is.
Yep.
And then like establishing is something that also is just countercultural because now you are disciplining. Discipline is now part of it.
That's right.
As you have raised sons, what was the establishing part like in your house?
Well, so if I could, I'm just going to jump back just the first thought.
Sorry.
No. Just thinking about the reality for me. I grew up in a divorced family. So my dad was an alcoholic, is a recovering alcoholic. My parents got divorced when I was an early teen, and there was a hole, there was an emptiness in me that I didn't get from my own dad because he wasn't there, both first emotionally and secondly just physically not present.
Sure.
But I longed for that, and it was in that moment where I found Christ. That was in that moment as a teenager, I was looking for that, but I was just I was a wounded half of a man, right? And it wasn't until later that I actually had men who came into my life that I didn't plan, who fathered me, and God sent me people to help me become who I am. And but at the end of the day, kind of just starting with the idea that none of us are perfect and that it's okay and we're going to make mistakes, but it's part of the journey. And it is actually by being a dad that I felt healed as a son and became more deeply aware of God the Father. I have this moment where and I'm sorry, I'm deviating a little bit, but having our firstborn child, right? And sitting there looking and saying, I love you more than I could ever imagine. I look at this child and say, you do absolutely nothing for me. You when we feed you, we clothe you, and as a return, you spit up on us, you fill up your diaper, you wake us up in the middle of the night. But I have this love that I don't understand. And I'm just like overwhelmed with how much I loved our child. And then I hear God the Father say, and now you have a glimpse of how much I love you.
Right.
And I start weeping, and it's just like, but that's what happens when we father, when we step out, even if we're not up to the task. there was this dad in town that I was talking to, and I'm like, hey, look, you're coming into these great years of raising your son. He's got a 12 turning 13-year-old son. And I'm like, oh, this is awesome. And I talked about all these different things that you do to initiate and pass on to your son. And his shoulders slumped, and he just kind of like looked at me, and he was kind of mad, you know, and he had this notion of, dude, I am so overwhelmed already, and now you just laid this whole burden on me. And he's like, he looked and said, I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I have what it takes to raise a son. And I put my arm on him, and I was like, I'm sorry, you don't have what it takes. God does. And it's by you being at that place where you could admit that that God can work through you. But anyway, there is this moment in raising a son, and I actually I'm doing this program now, and I look back. It was when my my oldest son, who's now 24, that he was about 9 years old, and 10 years old, and just started being more intentional, realizing that as a dad, we're always needed, but there's this golden time between like kind of 9, 10 to about 13 years old, before they kind of come of age, if you will, that you pour in, that they need you now more than ever. And that's the moments where you create adventure for the boy. That's when you establish a new relationship with your son through physical activity, through doing stuff. You know, when we were young dads, I bet we threw our kids in the air. I bet your wives did not do that. You know, there's a tack, right?
Doesn't have the shoulder muscles.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, it's a little bit more than just that. But there's something physical about men in general, and that's how we teach too. Too many times we jump to, okay, we're gonna have this lecture. No, it's about physically learning. It's about physical activity with our sons, and investing those times. It's kind of like this golden years of really preparing our son for adolescence. So anyway, I could keep going, but I mean, it's just this beautiful time where you want to, capture. That's why those books are so important. You create an imagination for your boys about what it means to go out to a battle, to have adventure. Your kids need to kind of drink deeply of that. And I know you guys talk about that a lot here in the show.
Yeah. So I think one of the things you mentioned, which I think this is a problem you're seeking to solve, is that as American society, we have no rites of passage.
That's right.
Anymore.
That's right.
And Adam and I have talked about this before. We've kind of talked about it, like mentioned it on the show, but it's not something that I know what to do. I don't know how to solve it. So you are putting together a program.
Yes.
About rites of passage. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah. So there's two parts. One, I have a course called Dads versus Wild. And it's a 5-week course that we're doing for dads, particularly as they prepare for the teen years. So dads with sons between the ages of like 9 and 13, give or take.
Okay.
It's about preparation, because the rites of passage really, they have to come with maturity. Like you can't give your son meat until he's ready for it, And so it's like in that early years where you're doing a lot of preparation, and so you're building a platform in those golden years between you and the dad. But ultimately, when you get to rites of passage, which we have constituted as when they're kind of like going into high school, like that 13-year-old age, and then as they're kind of getting on from high school, heading off to college, because there's some transition moments, and then really ultimately at their wedding, right? So those are kind of three pivotal moments for boys, and I have found that it has to be men. It's not just the dad anymore. So when you get to rites of passage, there are moments where the dad is preparing your son and building it up, but then you need a company of men. You need some friends like the two of you working together with your sons to really create a path. And so we have devised, and we've been doing this now, I think we've had maybe 8 or 9 guys young men, either my sons or nephews that we've brought through this. So we have a whole brotherhood, and it's spending time. So we create a weekend event where they're put through some trials, some challenges, some opportunities. They learn from men in a way they've never before. We teach them how to shoot. We teach them how to do land navigation, some very manly things, but we also teach them this is what prayer looks like. This is how to have a conversation with a man. But it's the beginning, not an end. It starts them on a path, particularly as they go into high school, to be ready for the peer pressure, the challenges, the changes. It's like, okay, we need to recognize you're now on a journey. And that journey, we, as your larger company of men are both watching you and here for you. It's powerful.
I dig it.
And I think if you're a guy who doesn't have a brotherhood but yearns to have authentic friendship, you need to be praying about it.
That's right.
Ask God to put men in your life that you can build this brotherhood around.
Yeah.
Because He wants it for you too. I mean, we're made for community.
Amen. Amen. And I think that's why it's beautiful to start young, meaning like a 9-10-year-old. Start looking now for other men that can go alongside you.
We'll be right back. I mean, time and time again, I hear guys saying, like, I just wish I had another a friend to do this with.
Yes.
And just like you want to pray for your son's or your daughter's future spouse, I think you should be praying to have good friends, that God brings people into your life.
Yes.
That'll bring you closer to Him.
Both for dads and for their sons, I mean, because that's the reality is that they both need it. Like one of the sections we're going to be doing is called No Man is an Island, right? And it's just that idea that both for dads and for their sons, you need to be really thoughtful and teach them how to evaluate even their friends. Look at what does it mean to have a good friend and be a good friend. But then this whole rights, I don't know how deep you want to go into it, but happy to talk through the weekend as well as the stuff.
I'd like to get into it because I think sometimes with this kind of thing, the details
are important. Because you can say write a passage and they're like, okay, yeah, I'm in.
What does that look like?
What do I do?
Yeah.
Right.
Cool. Juan, is that okay? Is Mucho?
Mm-hmm. Is that the last segment?
And then we'll talk more. See.
Extra Mucho.
Extra.
Mucho on the side.
Ooh, even Mucho on the side.
Ooh,
a la carte Mucho.
Shoo-wee.
I didn't even consider a la carte Mucho.
Mucho. Party avad. Can I get that to go, please? Welcome back to the Catholic Man Show. A show full of mucho.
Muy mucho.
Muy mucho. Grande mucho. I basically speak Spanish, as
you guys are aware.
Many people know. Basically being an operative, very key word. So, rites of passage. Adam and I were just talking about rites of passage. And one thing that I was thinking about recently is that we were talking about this on Friday, yesterday. Yesterday morning. Today is Saturday.
Correct.
This is Saturday. Anyway, about a rite of passage, it needs to be grounded in reality, and not simply ceremonial.
Yes.
Like there needs to be, after a rite of passage, a real difference. If like you do this with your kid and it's like something you do that's ceremonial and, that can be nice. But afterwards, if there's no difference in what's expected of him or his, there should be an increase, I think, in freedom and responsibility.
That's right.
More should be expected, more should be given. Because rites of passage, I think, are real. For instance, I think a good one is First Holy Communion.
Right.
There is I'm not sure if it's correct to say you're ontologically different afterwards, but there is definitely a real change in what's expected of you and what you're given, right? You're being given infinitely more than you had before.
Yeah.
So without that, the rite of passage, I think it can kind of
be watered down,
fall flat, or even create like a sense of like jadedness in a kid that they might not be aware of, right? Like, oh yeah, all this stuff is just fake. As they get older.
And it's just one more thing that they're given that's just kind of limp and it falls
becomes
flat.
like work instead of something to be proud of.
And isn't that true with our faith, right? We have all these beautiful rituals. We have all these, standing, kneeling, standing, how we hold our hands. All of these things could just become just background and could just become that we're going through the motions.
Right.
And it's like, but as men, we need to be super intentional that this is a moment of change for that boy and your relationship with that boy. I mean, Indian cultures, the boy would be sent out and would no longer live with the mom. would be sent away, right? And different cultures do this in different ways. But there's always this, I mean, if you look back, there's just this always sense that men need to go through this, because women, it just becomes more natural. Their kind of passage. But for men, we need to act. Men need to act in the lives of the boys in order to draw them out to be men. Masculinity is bestowed by masculinity.
Yeah, absolutely. And in many ways, that rite of passage was, almost a burden sometimes. Okay, for instance, I think small communities, tribal communities, they really did rites of passage. I mean, pretty well.
Yes.
And it meant that once you did that and you became a man, you had the right to speak.
Yes.
Most of the time you are considered an equal, in the community. But it also meant if we're attacked, if we go to war, you will be expected to go up against whoever the other adults are that come and attack us. So you got to be ready for that, and you might die in battle. Welcome to manhood.
No, that's and if you even just look at our Jewish brothers, right, our elder brothers in faith, where the bar mitzvah is now the boy is able to read Torah on his own. And the significance of that. So
really, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So there's I love reading about kind of the Jewish history, because it really teaches me so much about that's probably
history.
why we do this. You know. But they have this. They have to memorize it, and then they're going to read it in public, right? So they're going to read Torah in public, and then they have the ability now to say the faith is your own. It's no longer I am your parent teaching you about the faith. The faith is now your responsibility. And I think that's that. So I'm trying to draw some of these things, both from some good Catholic sources, Christian sources, but Jewish and other, like saying, okay, what does it look like? And the first time we did this, we made it a bar. Like, are you going to be? It's a pass fail. Are you going to be a man or not? And we made my brother-in-laws and I kind of made this more of a challenge weekend, where we put them through trust things, we put them through physical things, we put them out in the wilderness. Like, we thought we were going to do all these things, and then we realized, this is actually a beginning of a process rather than a pass-fail test. But there needs to be physicality to it, and it does, as you said, it needs to be changing the way we relate to that young man, that we have expectations, and there's something real. Like for us, we did it at my father-in-law's hunting cabin. And that was the point upon which, after they went through all of this, that they actually could come hunting with the men now. So like there's things that change, and then they're invited out, and then they help in the next, so those young men help out on the next initiation. So now they're a part of
key detail. Right there.
They're in the company of men, and so that what I believe happens. Dads do this in general. Pass on an identity to our sons, right? So we pass on who they are. What's their place in this bigger story? We do that personally, but there's something powerful when we do it with men. And so we go through, again, teaching them all these kind of skills, if you will, and then we show them what the habits of a real man. And there's physical exercise, there's mental thing. We play poker. Teaching them things that are awesome, I think, about being a man.
Right.
But then we also have time where we sit down one-on-one with the guys, and their uncles are passing on wisdom, and it's not intense, but it's usually sharing their story, sharing how they came to know the Lord, how they overcame, whether it be sin or other things in their lives. And oftentimes, these young men coming from great Catholic homes still struggle with things like pornography, and it's like, but being honest and passing on that wisdom that this is the way forward. This is how we're going to get there. They need to hear that. And then we end with a ceremony. And that ceremony now isn't just fluff. It's like it's a culmination where we have them come up and present in front of the men and say they're presenting on a patron saint or some ish, but they need to be ready to answer questions in front of kind of the scrutiny, if you will, of men.
I like that, yeah.
And then there's an affirmation of other men saying, I recognize this. Before I thought of you as a boy, you're kind of sheepish, but this weekend I've seen you step up. Having an affirmation that ends with us taking an oath. And we kind of call it our clan oath, so that they take it and each man comes up to them and says, brother to brother, life in life and death through Jesus Christ. So we have this kind of little oath that we have, and then there's a bestowing of a gift. And for us, it's usually a rifle, and so up to that point, they had nothing that was their own. And now we give that to say that you are, in a way, like a weapon. You're dangerous, you're powerful, but you need to learn how to control your power so that you can use it for good and not evil. And so there's this, and then we have our grandfather prays over them, blesses them, kind of patriarchal blessing, and that kind of completes the ceremony, if you will. And it's a beautiful new entrance for these young men.
So for you, does this mostly take place within the family?
Yeah, again, we're blessed to
have a large family.
We have a
large.
My wife comes from a family of 10, and so we have 10 kids, but my wife comes from 10, so we've got a whole cadre.
Literally a clan.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so we're spreading out now, where we've got about 60, I think it's 50 or 60 grandkids that are in the so far.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and now we're starting the next generation with our grandkids.
So have you found that it's important for, if you have a young boy who's going to go through this, that he has a peer to do it with him?
So we've tried to do it so they're matched up, right? So that they may not be exactly the same age, but and now for us, again, not everybody can have this, but they're all cousins, right? That are going through this. So we have found, because there's so many, like 3 will be going through it this summer, and we actually just had our conference call with all the men talking about this weekend. I do think there's something powerful that it's not just one kid going through it. There are parts that need to be just for that boy, that are intentional about him, but that if he's going through it together, so that if it's ideal that you have friends who's saying, we want this for our sons, and you make it your own. Like one of my brother-in-laws really liked the idea of kind of conferring a new name, on the, so you make it your own. You make this ceremony but it has to have meaning. It has to have substance behind it. But if they're there together, they now created a new bond. And we say, what happens at men's camp stays at men's camp. The entering in the company of men, you're not sharing this with your mom or others in a good way, in a healthy way.
Right.
But that these are things that we do as men. And, there's a bond that then forms those 2 or 3 together in a way that they need each other, and we talked about friendships earlier, but that's really a crucial part of this whole passage.
I think this is just so important for men, for boys, boys becoming men, especially because
boys to men.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
R&B. Could you put a little music?
Yeah. Young women have a natural coming of age, that's built into puberty. It
is natural and internal to them,
right? And that is this, it's a very significant moment that is like a calling to womanhood.
Yes.
I mean, literally in their body.
That's right.
Men don't have that in the same way, so it's, I think, just so important. So this is a program that you're offering as like a skeleton, or talk about that.
Yeah, so I'm offering this course, right? And the course does talk about the rites of passage, but it's heavily focused on forming the dad to walk their son through this journey.
Okay.
And so we do talk about rites of passage. We're going to talk about what it could be, and we have a whole plan of this is where your son's at these different developmental stages. This is what he's looking for. What's kind of the virtuous physical as well as spiritual development where he's at, as well as the role the dad plays. But each of these 5 lessons, we're going to go through, what are the marks of a man, so that dad can really own that. Because if you don't own your own story and how you're investing in your son, you can only give what you have yourself, putting the oxygen mask on yourself, if you will, right? And so we go through that, and then we kind of end with this deeper sense that all of us need to be fathered by God. And that at the end of the day, both as dads as well as for our sons, there is a gap in between what we can offer and what our sons need. And that gap is filled by God's grace and Him fathering our sons.
Isn't it amazing that we share a name with God, fathers, and He is God the Father?
It can be overwhelming if you think about it too much. It's powerful, though.
Where can they go to look about the course?
Yeah, messyfamilyproject.org. All the information can be there.
Cool. All right, well, we'll continue this conversation just a little bit on the other side. If you're listening to the radio right now, check us out on the podcast, CatholicManShow.com. We're on the Lord's team.
The winning side.
So raise your glass.
And cheers to Jesus. Do we have time to keep going?
Can you just hit record for the Cubase? Mucho. Gracias, Juan. One of the questions I had, Mike, was how important is it to structure part of this rite of passage to give them a real opportunity to fail? Is it do you want to have it so strenuous that listen, maybe you're going to fail at this, and how are you going to react to that?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts there?
Well, again, this is
a good question.
It is a great question, and because men do fail, right? So, there is something so powerful about earning your place and not being like as Catholics, as Christians, we have received so much by grace, but it's not a cheap grace. Dietrich Bonhoeffer talks about this idea of cheap grace, right? It comes with a cost. There's a price attached to it. And so I think it's important that we as dads are really attuned to our sons, meaning, are they ready? Are they ready for the task? And it comes through us. And this is where I think the rite of passage, the dads obviously play the crucial role. Is your son ready? It's not an age that, oh, they're ready.
Right.
It's do they have in them the ability to go beyond their own abilities? Do they have a deep timidness? Well, use activities that you as a dad are doing so as to draw that out so that you really set them up for success. I think I mentioned, but we originally started this as a pass-fail like idea, and we wanted to make it serious and we wanted to make it challenging. But then as we kind of gone through it with a couple boys, we realized the Indian culture would do that. Like, you would be banished if you didn't come back and you accomplished the quest or whatever. You wouldn't be welcome back in the tribe. And I'm like, that doesn't feel like that's what God does with us, right? And we as men need to recognize that we call our sons out. So we kind of decided that there was a point when, as men, they weren't ready. We just like, well, it's okay. We'll have a part of things, but we're going to wait. We're going to wait a year, and they're going to come back, and we're going to kind of do some of the similar things, and we'll see where they're at. So there is this balance. Again, we haven't perfected it, so don't say that it's gospel, right? But I do think that you got to have a standard. And you can't just say, oh, it's just wherever. You know what I mean? Like, you have to look and say, what are the marks? And this is where in a certain way, we have the virtues. We have we have beautiful sense of what it means to be a Christian man. But what are the identifiers within your own son, within your own nephew or friend? Do they have it? And are they sufficient enough to say, yes, you're ready to be among our conversation? Because there were some young men who we brought through this process who were just kind of sitting back as wallflowers, that weren't jumping in, that weren't engaging, that were just very passive, to be very honest. And I think a clear mark of a man is that you're beginning to be proactive, or at least you're responsive to.
You're an initiator.
Exactly. And if you don't have that spirit within you, or that's not being called forth, maybe you lack some maturity in that area. And I think going back to the idea of some 20-somethings who are still wearing feety pajamas, or onesies, again, minus your Christmas ones, there is something that lacks in them of initiative. And that is one of the things that we need as a man. We can't have another man like Adam sit on the sidelines when the dragon is going after our wife. We need men to have that initiative within them. And it's about calling them up to that rather than simply saying, okay, you didn't, you're banished or something, which we wouldn't do, right? But we say this is a journey and you're not done. But there are some marks that are saying, okay, yeah, this is where you want to be. This is where I aspire, and this is the vision I have for you, my son, and I'm going to help you get there. It's not going to be on your own.
Yeah, and there's something that is just right about that that seems to be the way God operates as well, that at some level you have to earn the call.
Yeah.
Okay, God, it's absolutely true that God doesn't call the qualified. He sanctifies the called, right? But I can just, think in my own life, there have been times where, okay, I made changes in my life where I dedicated myself more to prayer or to whatever, and had these immediate changes, gifts from God, where I, in reflecting, realized He was waiting for me. He wanted these things for me, but He was waiting until I was ready.
Yes.
And it was when I chose to take, a deeper, to go further up and further in, as C.S. Lewis would say, that's when He said, okay, now you've earned this call, and not that, of course, I'm not saying that I earned it, I'm not, a Pelagian.
Heretic.
Right.
Heretic.
But there's something to that where, like this manhood that it's not something that you're just given, like the love, like the love of a child when they're born.
Yes.
They didn't earn that love.
That's exactly right.
Okay, it's just so different. You had to earn your wife's love.
Yes. You had to work at it, right?
And if you didn't, then it wouldn't be as beautiful. It wouldn't be as like this total gift.
That's right.
So much. But so for these boys, that the fact that they earned it.
Yes. It matters.
It does matter.
And it's like this deep sense. I mean, obviously not on the same level, but it's like, you know that your wives love you, both physically and intellectually, emotionally. But that has been work, to have that. Your sons need to know that they have been pushed, they have been challenged, they have been tested, and they've been found worthy.
Right.
I mean, if they don't know that in the deep core of their being, then they will always be asking that question. I mean, again, not that it will solve all your problems, but ultimately, when you look at things like pornography, when you look at the men who are going out who are machismo, who are pursuing many women and pursuing power, what are they? They're ultimately asking, am I a man?
Am I good enough?
Am I good enough? Right? And so it's like, we as dads need to be in that place where we're saying, this is the definition of a man, so that you can be not sufficient without God, but sufficient with God. You know what I mean? Meaning that there's no woman, there's no activity, you're not earning the respect of the world. You are who you are. And that's where that quote that I talked about with Juan, that the John Paul II talks about that every family has a dignity and a responsibility. And it's really a summons, family, become what you are. And that's true for us as men. It's like God is saying, you are made to be dads. All men are made to be dads. All boys are meant to become men. It's become who you are. God has planted it in us, but it's like we are searching for in all the wrong places. And as a teenager, and that's why these rites of passage are in that teenage years, because developmentally they are defining their new identity as an independent individual. And that's a beautiful thing. That's why there's teenage rebellion, because they're trying to define who they are. Not just, and that's why other men are important. It's not just I'm a member of this family. That's important, but who am I in the world? Who am I to my friends? Who am I in the world out there? And dad, more than mom, signifies the world outside, but even more, other men. And they can say, that's why I'm helping define. You're helping shape that worldview for them at those rites of passage, that they're like, no, these are the men that I want you to trust. These are the men that I want you to follow in their footsteps. And they're fun, and they're awesome, and they're adventurous, and they're manly men who are great examples for you.
And they will show you the way.
That's right.
Yeah, so like compare the love of your wife versus the love of your mother. You like you said, your wife loves you. You also know your mother loves you.
That's right.
The difference is that your wife needs you, and your mother doesn't.
Yeah.
Okay? And so this whole thing, life in general teaches us to make this total gift of self. We're learning to give of ourselves. And a man especially a man needs to know how to do that, because he is as we said, the initiator. And that's so important, because it's all a preparation for heaven, where, that's how you love, is you in heaven. It's just total gift of self, right? To God, to everyone. It's just this communion of love.
Amen.
Okay.
Amen.
And so like, that's what we're preparing for. If a man doesn't know that he's worthy of giving himself,
that's right.
That's what we're trying to do here, is teach men, young boys, that you're awesome.
That's right.
You're strong, and like
you're a Catholic warrior,
and people need you. We need you.
Yeah.
And there are specific people in this world who will need you, and you have to
get into the breach.
You have to be ready to give yourself.
That's right. Into the breach. Great document from Bishop Olmsted. I mentioned you guys have talked about. Yeah, that's awesome. That is great stuff.
I have a question on the intellectual rite of passage. Because we've talked about some of the physical stuff, hunting, camping, starting fires, hiking, fishing. All those things. Those, at least for me, come naturally. It's like I can do those. I may not understand and I know each kid probably is different.
Right.
But what does the intellectual rite of passage look like?
Yeah, so every kid is different, and I do think that in general, men, physiologically we are less verbal than women, and it's just in case you didn't know that.
Anna Faustina definitely proved that when he came into she's like, look at this, and here's my dress, and here's my picture, and this is the crayons, look what I did yesterday, and like she was just like wearing you out.
I used up all my words right there. I had nothing left, No, but I do think it's heavily physical. So I don't want to dismiss by any means, but it is body, mind, and spirit. And so we do, like, there's actually in the Dangerous Book for boys, there's poems that boys should memorize, right? There are 7 or 9 poems every boy should know. But we do want them to go deep into that because again, for me, I'm Irish, so I go into this. There is this idea of the poet warrior, in Ireland, and so they and I think actually in kind of chivalry in general, there's this understanding that there is this notion of kind of literature or poetry, as well as the strength of a knight and a warrior. And so we try to tie that in, and then we also give them books. So I should have mentioned this. One of my favorites is Horatio Hornblower. Have you ever heard of this?
I've heard of it.
Yeah. So anyway, there's a
know.
BBC TV version of it. Great books that talk about this young man kind of coming of age in the British Navy. Anyway, but it's this great story of passage. But I think those stories, like getting the intellectual imagination as well as filling them, with a heart of a warrior, if you will, that they're ready to step up. But then there's also just the kind of intellectual preparation as what does it mean in their formation. So I often send them to just different youth conferences or other things from a spiritual side. But the whole kind of going deeper on the intellectual life, I'm not sure if that answers some of your question, but I think there is something there. But I think for boys, it's much more, more physical than kind of a mere intellectual exercise. But I'm not sure if that answered
yeah.
Well, I think that if a man doesn't appreciate poetry, or really what I think is a better way to say it is have a deep appreciation for beauty.
Yes.
When he's seeking a spouse, he won't know to find the beauty of a soul, right? Okay, it's a boy does not need to be taught to find a good-looking woman. Okay,
that's right.
That we don't need to worry about teaching that. But there's more to a woman, right, than her exterior beauty.
Yes.
Obviously, I mean that goes without saying. And so if a boy doesn't know to appreciate beauty, then I don't think that he'll know how to find and how to love a woman. Because you can find, marry the best looking woman you can find, but that might not be the best approach to finding a spouse for marriage.
Holy spouse.
Right, exactly.
And even more than just the spouse, which is obviously, but it's understanding beauty, truth, goodness, and beauty. It's like by seeing a woman, by understanding both the physical as well as the internal, you're scratching at who God is, right? There's a longing for us, and even in our relationships, it's all of particularly our sons need to know what that true beauty is, what that looks like. And they'll see it from the way we treat our wives. Because if you want to be a great dad, you need to be an amazing husband first. But they need to see tangible examples of how we treat and how we're drawn to beauty. And we need to lead them in that by, poetry and other things. I think that's there is something really, again, countercultural in a lot, but it is filling their mind with things that are good, pure, and true.
I wanted to dive in a little bit more into Anne's question and this recognition of beauty without knowing absolute truths. So as far as like philosophically and theologically, what would be some expectations for you to say? You need to have at least these types of concepts down, so that once you have the concept and you have an absolute truth, you can compare it to that. So philosophically and theologically, what would be some of the minimum expectations you would see in this?
Like prerequisites?
Yes.
Yeah. So you're talking about, just to make sure I understand you, Juan, that you're talking about just the intellectual preparation, if you will, for Yeah, I mean, because this is what you have to do. I mean, you have to steep your son in, I think, good literature, but also philosophical conversations, right? So we have a lot of our kids go through debate, and so we do some of it within our home, but I am part of my brand is not being intellectual. That's part of who I am.
Me too.
I just say I own that. I know a lot of smart people, and I like to hang around with them, and I pick up osmosis. But I think it's both in conversation, and so around our dinner table, we'll try to have one conversation. It doesn't always happen, but try to have conversations that bring the truth in light of kind of relevant world experience. So there's stuff going on at school, stuff going on in the world that we try to bring that in. But I don't do, Juan, you talked about the how you have some teaching times that you do with our kids. which is phenomenal. To be able to have that, whether it be at the dinner table, I think is a great time to have many teachings. But again, thinking of boys, we can't have lectures. I don't find that to be fruitful. I remember I took my son skiing, and we first time out, again, this is part of this kind of preparation time, if you will, both bonding with him, but also kind of just bringing him into some new experiences. And I felt like we skied all day, and it earned me 20 minutes to really speak into his heart about what it means to be a man. And I feel like that is the again, every individual dad needs to lean into what they have. Maybe outdoors comes natural to you. Maybe the intellectual life. Maybe you're more philosophical, theological. Lean into that, because that's how you have been gifted. I have, a little bit of theological background, but I put it in the context of our everyday applications in the world. And I think that as dads, we need to know what our own genius is. It's our expertise, it's our skills, it's our talents, our experience, our academic, our physical, and just recognizing our kids need all of that. And how we train and form our kids, and particularly our sons, is going to be different. And be okay with that. And that your sons may have some similar loves and have some other things that are like, no, that's not what we do. And so I don't know if I'm going to give you a depth that Juan's looking for. I don't have. You got to go through the Plato's laws. You don't have to go through certain Aquinas things, which again I know you guys love Aquinas, but it's I think that there's got to be a foundation of what truth is, and then using every occasion to integrate it. There was this study that Notre Dame, the McGrath Institute did. I think they released it last summer, about the generational passing on of the faith, and they talked about one of the key moments for the families that actually passed the faith on. What are the characteristics? Was that they had regular, engaging conversation of, how do I engage the world as a Catholic? How does my faith engage with the wider world? That the faith wasn't just an abstraction. It wasn't just something we did on Sunday, which we know that's not sufficient. But it was having the conversations, because word and deed. We need to be able to have the deeds that witness the faith, that create the habits in our kids, but we need the words to couple with it, so that they can see, yes, this is how we do this. How do we draw our faith into action? Recognizing the spiritual warfare that we're in, recognizing that our faith and values are, sometimes on trial in the public square. How do we engage? How do we evaluate? And how do we look at the world? So I think that is the kind of foundation that we as men particularly need to lead and form our kids in.
Beautiful.
Juan wants more, but
the only other question, so we kind of hit physical, we've hit the intellectual, and you kind of touched on the spiritual aspect.
Yes.
Some dads like new name or a new patron saint that they're going to uphold.
Which fits in nicely with a confirmation saint, right? Depending on what your diocese is doing age-wise.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah. Do you also have, and you talked about even prayer throughout the rite of passage or weekend, if you will. Yeah. Is there something else like you make sure to instill in them, like as far as in the spiritual life?
Yeah, so we do. I remember I've done different things, and so I've done a little. We say we're the most consistent, inconsistent people out there. We've done a little bit of everything. Okay,
sure.
So
that's what you have to do, to figure out what works.
You figure out what works, and what works for you as well as for your son.
Yeah.
And so spiritually, I've made it a point to give them a prayer journal. So at this point in their lives, I want them to have a personal prayer time, so that they are reading scripture. And again, we do that with the little kids, but sometimes it sticks, sometimes it doesn't. But really, when they come to this age, this is where I do have that conversation about what our Jewish, our Jewish brethren, talk about. That this is a time where you step in and you begin owning your faith now in a new way, and so that prayer journal, and then again in the beginning we try to get them into that habit, and then I teach them how I pray. I do a little Lectio Divina every day, and I just walk that through with them, so that they're now trained in doing that on their own. We also, like my one son, you guys are Thomas Aquinas. He's my one son's really into Ignatian exercises. So we go through different things depending on the kid. So that's going to draw them in, because I feel like the beauty of the Catholic Church is that we have something for everybody. You know, you might have a Benedictine, the or at Labrora. You've got we have so many different both intellectual and spiritual pursuits within the church that we can find something to draw our kids out.
For every temperament.
Exactly.
It's a robust platform.
And actually, speaking of that, we do try to do some little assessments with our kids, like temperaments, and just thinking through so that they can own how they approach the world, because that approaches how they develop virtue and the vices that are going to be more a challenge for them.
Right.
And so we try to create that idea that they are now in charge of having their own personal prayer time, and that they not only are going to Mass and praying the Rosary, or we do night prayer a lot as a family, but now you have your own time that you are spending with the Lord. And then we invest and say every year you should be going on a retreat. And so oftentimes we'll find either a youth conference or a kind of a Catholic camp that we send them, that they are now, this is a habit. These are the habits you have, in addition to, again, as a family, we always go to confession, those sorts of things that are already there, but now this is how they're owning that. And again, different people have done, we did the consecration, 33 days,
Morning Glory.
Morning Glory, right, with our sons, which I think is just, getting them in touch with who Our Lady is, and how that not just as a devotion, but a way of life lives out for them.
What role does the mom play in all of this?
So this is probably crucial, and Alicia would be better at answering this, but I've witnessed her, and she's a rock star. She's amazing, and she loves boys, and but there are many moms that we've talked to who are just want to protect their sons. I mean, their knee-jerk reaction is safety and avoidance of risk. And I remember there was this moment where our oldest son is out climbing in a tree, and he is 30 feet in the air, and she's having heart palpitations. She's like, and then she I just can't look. And then he says, Mom, help. And she's starting to just get flushed. She rushes over and is like, ha ha ha, just got you, and
she chops the tree down.
Exactly. She started throwing things at him, and so it's I think the moms need to recognize that they will always need their mom. They will never not need their mom, and but the mom needs to let go. Again, depending on what kind of disposition you have, in general, women want to protect, and they want to keep their boys safe. And there's a good balance in that. There are some dads who maybe are a little too wild or allow too much, but they do need to begin to both let go and begin establishing a new relationship. Women, my wife would put it this way, that boys particularly shut down when there's an emotional response from her as a mom. And so as moms, they need to understand there's still a powerful role that you have in your son's life, but it has changed. And particularly after that rite of passage, that's the mark that we use as a time to say, okay, there's a beginning of a difference that you need to take in and say, I'm talking to him differently. I expect differently of him, but I'm also not just holding him back. I'm kind of the mom is letting him go. And that's hard for a lot of moms.
I'm sure that's a challenge. Yeah. I mean, even I was just thinking, for myself, even as a dad, I have to change as well.
That's right. That's a big difference.
And have a switch that changes, and especially, so as husband and wife, you have to be on the same page here and understanding before this happens.
That's right.
Hey, listen, when he comes back, we have to be together on this and treat him differently.
That's right.
That's why it's important for men to be strong, competent men, so that our wives feel comfortable. Because it's like they, I think, have a natural tendency that they themselves need to be protected.
That's right.
And these are their children. So
That's
it's like,
right.
you need
It's an
to
extension of
protect
them.
me
Yeah.
by guarding my child. And so if we are strong, competent men, and our wives know that, then they're going to be more comfortable with these kinds of transitions.
That's a great point, because you really, and trust is earned, right? Your wives are going to look at us and say, are they listening to me? Are they taking in what I'm saying? Because she has just as much insight as we do into the raising of our children, obviously, but there is fatherly intuition. There are things that we, kids don't need to be mothered and they don't need to be fathered. They need both of them together. Every child deserves that. And there's this beautiful, it's not a tension, but there's this beautiful dance, this dynamic of complementarity, right? But at this point, I would say that the moms are heavily, soft, comfortable, safe. Who do you go to? I mean, I don't know what your relationship is like with your mom, but like we talked about earlier, my mom is always going to love me and always think that I'm the best and does and it's like, and that's true, I am, but it's also that a place where you want to be challenged, right? And so your wife needs to always be in that place that she is the safe place. She is the comforter, and our kids need to know that. But they also now are beginning this movement internally that we have to draw out as men, that they're going to be a little bit more dangerous. They're going to be entering into a little bit more adventurous time. And for moms, that can be a hard transition. And for us as dads to know, one, like you said, we have to earn and kind of build up their confidence in our ability to father them. But we also need to step up, because I feel like I actually went back, and I'm a big journaler.
Yeah. Words are hard. Yes.
Sorry, let me take it.
What's
in this?
That's our shtick. Words are hard. We struggle.
But we're men. We're here, right? But I'm a journaler. I journal. And,
a journaler.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
what he said.
Yeah,
and,
that one.
I looked back, and I actually I had kind of a prayer that I said, Lord, this is when I could easily check out. Things are actually getting. The stakes are up. I'm on the spotlight's, in a way, on a dad when your son's at that point. It's like, again, not that you don't always play a crucial role, but I feel like now in that early preteen years, it's like, okay, you can't screw this up. And I felt like saying, Lord, I'm not sure I remember saying, I wrote this, I'm not sure I have what it takes. And that's the question that we need to all say. It's like, this is when many dads check out, because the stakes are higher, and it's real.
Yeah,
and there is no safety net,
Right, it requires from you.
It's more sacrifice. I mean, up until that point, kind of to the protect and serve, it's like, I can do that. I can protect my family against at least physical and then spiritual foes, right? But then it's like, okay, and I can provide for them.
Because they're kind of a unit. Yeah. It's like you protect them all at like they're all just here in the home together. I protect the house, and
That's
so
right.
like, the family. But now as they start to go out, it's like, I have to protect the family and this boy who's kind of in this process of venturing out of the family.
Correct.
The establishing part.
Exactly.
And one of the ways you protect him is by not keeping him in the family.
That's
you
right.
You have to
Or
let
in the
him.
house.
That's right.
That's what. Exactly.
Yeah.
You have to let him move. I mean, otherwise, you're not protecting him. You're actually weakening him.
And the analogy that I often use is like, just think about swimming, right? Early days, you're holding that kid close. They're going to drown. I had a 3-year-old dove in the pool. I mean, it was just like, as a father, as a mother, you want to always protect, and you need to.
Right.
But you've got to move from that protecting their innocence to building Christian maturity. And that's when you want your kids to learn how to swim on their own. And they're out now, not just in a pool, but they're out in the ocean. And they've got power, and they've got strength, and they've got skill, and you've got trust in them, so that they can really, be living their life according to God's design. And that's a hard thing. My wife, somebody else wrote this, but the raising of a son is like the longest breakup of their lives, because they have this deep love for their son, but then they're separating. There's a natural separation, and then it obviously concludes is the wrong word, but it kind of culminates in their marriage. Now your son has passed on. I mean, those are those moments where you look at and say, this is my son, and I am well pleased as his dad. He needs to hear those words from us, that he is a beloved son, and that we confer that deep sense of identity, but we also send forth. We commission. We're all commissioned by the Father, and we need to step in that kind of in a humble stewardship sort of way, but in an awesome way, representing God, that we're commissioning our sons to go out, because they have an adventure to lead. This is John Eldridge, an adventure to lead, a battle to fight, and a beauty to rescue. And that there's a longing in a man's heart, and it's beginning in that time for boys.
Beautiful.
I don't know if we could go out any better than that. So,
Mike, thanks for being here.
Yeah,
this is just awesome.
This is really great. You guys are doing great work, and I love being here. And next time we got to drink more. So.
Yeah. All right, we're on the Lord's team.
The winning side.
So raise your glass.
Cheers to Jesus.
Cheers.